Good morning. Welcome to King's Reports News Hour. 22nd day in the 12th month, 16th year of Changi. We're about to close out the 16th year. This is the final weekend, or final full week, I guess. We'll have a couple of days next week, but final full weekend is 16th year of Changi. And we had a very exciting weekend, didn't we? Conservatives won big in Japan in elections and also in Thailand as well. And we'll see what all that is. The mystery in the eerie silence in China continues, and we have an update on that. Anyway, for right now, let's go and see what is happening around the kingdom right now in Chungkyung, Tennessee. 28 degrees, mostly cloudy, partly sunny today, high of 56. Wow, nice spring day. And then tonight, partly cloud and low of 33. Looks like spring is coming to Tennessee. And then at the hometown of True Father in North Pyongan Province, Cheongju, in Korea, 20 degrees right now, partly cloudy, overcast tonight, low of 15 degrees, tomorrow cloudy, high of 34. Spring is springing there as well. Seems okay, but in northeast Pennsylvania, not so much. 4 degrees right now and clear. My goodness, 4 degrees on the Fahrenheit scale. That's cold. And not as cold with intervals of clouds and sun today. It says high of 30. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low of 11 degrees. Still pretty chilly. And then at the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground in Limestone County, Texas, 56 and cloudy. Breezy this morning, otherwise very warm with sun through high clouds. High of 82. Yes. Tonight, partly cloudy and low of 60. And at the Suncheon Palace in Korea, 36 and cloudy. Remaining cloudy through the night, low of 27. Tomorrow, a couple of showers of rain or snow in the morning, followed by occasional rain and drizzle in the afternoon, high of 43. At the Gunma Palaces in Japan, 38 and clear to partly cloudy, low of 26. Tomorrow, times of cloud and sun, high of 50. Guangzhou, Guangdong, China, 64 and cloudy. Partly cloudy through the night, low of 56. Tomorrow, clouds giving way to some sun, high of 69. Let's go to Father's Word. And where are we today? We're in the book on true families. Okay. And let's see, I think we've done this already here. I don't know, maybe. But anyway, it's good to do it again. Okay. We're in chapter 1, True Parents and the Blessing. And we're in one of these subsections here. I don't know which ones. The title of the title of the subsection is that we get married in order to complete love. Okay, and Father says here, April 25th, 1986. What is marriage itself? What is marriage? This is one of those times when, we were I was coached that when Father asks a question, don't answer. Because whatever answer you give is going to be wrong. So let Father answer it for you. All right, so tell us, Father, what is love? What is marriage? But then he asks another question. Why do we get married? For what purpose do we marry? Um, it is not because you want to see a man or you want to see a woman. And I think the word see here means maybe, without any clothes on, I guess. Is that what he's meaning here? Anyway, that's what it says here. It's not so that you can see a man or that you can see a woman. We marry, here we go, here's the answer. So as to complete love, 사랑을 완성시키기 위해서 합니다. We do it in order to complete love. 남자가 찾아야 할 사랑은 여자가 아니면 못 찾습니다. So the love that a man seeks cannot be found unless it is in a woman. Ta-da! So bang there. Okay, so yes, 혼자서는 절대 못 찾습니다. You can never find that love alone. And I think also by implication, he's sort of doing a little ding here on homosexuality. The love that a man seeks is only found in a woman. You can never find it by yourself, or within yourself, or by yourself. And the love that a woman should seek can never be found unless it is in a man. 남자가 개인 완성을 하려면 상대 완성을 해야 되므로 결혼을 해야 됩니다. In order for a man to complete his character, 상대 완성을 해야. He must complete his partner, and that is why he marries. Without marrying, 결혼을 하지 않고는 사랑권 내에 못 나갑니다. You can never enter the realm of love. Without marrying, you can never enter the realm of love. So what's happening today where people are refusing or choosing, I guess, not to get married? You know, and people have these bucket lists. Oh, I want to go to this place and that place. I want to travel and I want to do this and I want to climb Mount Everest or whatever, whatever before I get married, right? But Father is saying that no, listen, you're not going to find love there. You can only enter the realm of love if you are married. Or not that all marriages are perfect, you know. Sometimes we marry, and then that's where the process begins. And there's a process. There's a process, and it's easier for some than for others. Quite frankly, for my wife and myself, it was quite easy. I think for us, it was one of the easy ones. Yes. Anyway, yes. Anyway, so that's why we get married. Okay, now I know. Okay. All right, let's see what's going on. So, first of all, let's go to Japan. Yeah, wow. Yes, and we have a very, very happy lady there. Let's take a look at her. She is very, very happy right here. As you can see, boy, that is a happy lady. She is in the realm of love, I would suspect. Yes, this is a Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, and behind her is a board. And this is how they do election night in Japan. Uh, they list. So this is the Liberal Democratic Party, all right, in their headquarters, and they list. Oops. Uh, they list all the candidates. Oh, come on, don't do this to me. How do I get rid of this? Stop seeing this ad. Okay. Not interested in this ad. Okay. Oh, come on now. You were this is anyway. Uh, so they list all the candidates on the board, and then every time someone is is elected in the vote count, they put a rose. I'm sure it's a paper rose, but anyway, they put a rose there, and that signifies the candidates that have secured their seats in the new parliament. And if you look down here, Takaichi's name is right here. This is her right here, if you can see my cursor. And then here, this is Ishiba Shigeru. He's the former prime minister, her predecessor. So they have constituencies, and they, of course, won their constituencies. So anyway, let's read the CNN article on this. Japan's conservative Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi swept to a landslide victory in a snap election on Sunday, marking a historic turnaround for her party, which had been hemorrhaging voter support in recent years until she stepped to the helm. And that's true. You know, they had lost the majority in both the lower house and the upper house. And even with the ally, they still did not really have much of a majority when you considered all the chairmanships, committee chairmanships, and so on. And she really blasted through that. I'll give you the more specific numbers in a minute, but she just really blasted through it. Since she was elected more than 4 months ago, becoming Japan's first female leader in a country where men have long dominated politics, Takaichi has enjoyed a sky-high approval ratings and a glowing endorsement from U.S. President Donald Trump. Yes, her approval ratings have been in the high 60s or 70s, which is pretty unheard of for approval ratings outside of North Korea, I guess. She won over many voters with her notoriously strong work ethic ethic, savvy social media game, and charisma, marked in viral moments such as a recent impromptu drum session with South Korean President Lee Jae-myung, stoking public enthusiasm to levels not seen since former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. It was a gamble to call a snap election, especially in the wintertime. I think one of the rules of politics in Japan is that you don't call elections in the winter because people don't like to trudge through the snow in order to go to the polls. And especially this year, there was a whole lot more snow than usual. But it seems that it didn't make a whole lot of difference, at least not for the conservative voters. But Takaichi hoped to translate her own popularity into a stronger mandate for her Liberal Democratic Party, which has been weakened in recent years by scandal involving the misuse of political funds. Thank you for not mentioning the other reason. Okay. Yes. Moving on. Okay. There's another reason, but we're not gonna. I'm sure you're aware of that. Her risky move paid off. The LDP won more than 310. Actually, it's more than that. It's more than 310, and I have the final numbers here. The final numbers. She really, CNN, I guess, 352. She has 352 seats. I think, or does this include? Oh, I'm sorry, 300. Okay. LDP is 316. Okay, and then there's another party that's allied with the LDP, which has 36. So 352 together. So LDP by itself, 316. All right. Marking the first time since World War II that a single party has secured a two-thirds majority. The broader ruling coalition won more than 340. And actually, the final number is 352. Crucially, the two-thirds supermajority in the lower house will allow Takaichi's party to override votes in the upper house of parliament and to propose amendments to the Constitution. But to actually amend the Constitution, there's still a long road ahead. Because to amend the Constitution, she needs to have a two-thirds majority in the upper house as well. And the next upper house election is not until 2018. And the lower house elections can be called by the prime minister anytime they want, but the upper house elections are set, called at particular intervals, and the next election isn't until 2018. So, and then after that, even if it passes both the lower and upper house, it still has to pass a public referendum by a majority vote. And so there's still a pretty long road ahead if they're really going to amend the Constitution. And I suspect that if she does get a two-thirds majority in 2018, well, then things will get serious about amending the Constitution. But there will be a lot of controversy within the LDP itself, because the LDP is not of one mind. It's actually a coalition of different people with all sorts of different opinions. And it'll take them a while to come up with an actual proposal for the amendment. Anyway, so to propose amendments to the Constitution, all right, in an interview with public broadcaster NHK, Takaichi thanked the voters who braved the cold and walked through the snowy roads to cast their votes, and they did indeed. I wanted the voters to give me a mandate because I advocated for responsible, proactive fiscal policy that would significantly shift economic and fiscal policy, she added. And we'll see. And the stock market responded by soaring. The Japanese stock market today, the Tokyo stock market, went above 57,000 yen for the first time ever. The bond market was different, but that's not too surprising. It's not at all uncommon. In fact, it is quite common for stocks and bonds to move in opposite directions because people will move their money from one market to another, depending on how things are going. But anyway, we'll take a look at that in a minute as well. Writing on X Sunday, Takaichi thanked Trump for his endorsement earlier this month and said the potential of the U.S.-Japan alliance was limitless, all in caps. She's learning. She's learning. Okay. Trump celebrated Takaichi's victory in a social media post on Sunday. Congratulations to Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi and her coalition on a landslide victory in today's very important vote. She is a highly respected and very popular leader. That is true. Sanae's bold and wise decision to call for an election paid off big time, Trump wrote. And I think Trump right now could use a bit of her, popularity. He'd like for that to rub off on him. He's in trouble. The U.S. leader added that it was his honor to endorse Takaichi and her coalition in the election. Sunday's remarkable result also means Takaichi's party and its coalition partner, the Japan Innovation Party, will have the numbers to chair all lower house committees. The election outcome will give Takaichi a fresh mandate to tackle challenges such as Japan's rapidly aging population, the rising cost of living, a weak yen, and soured relations with China, not sword, soured relations with China. You remember on Saturday we had that story about the guy who decided to have 54 children. We covered that, didn't we? He decided to have 54 children in order to solve Japan's uh, uh, declining birth rate. This was in Japan. And there was a picture of him with three women. I don't know if you could describe them as wives, but three women. And everybody was smiling. But it turns out that two of them have left him since. Anyway, so it's not an easy, not an easy, not an easy problem to solve, apparently. All right. Japan's stock market responded favorably, with the Nikkei benchmark at 225 index surging more than 5% to a fresh intraday high on expectations of tax cuts and higher government spending. And so she has proposed cutting sales tax on food for 2 years. The index, which tracks the largest companies listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange, closed almost 4% higher Monday. So Takaichi, a longtime lawmaker, rose to the top of the Japanese politics last fall after her predecessor Shigeru Ishiba resigned amid pressure from his own party following a series of bruising defeats for the LDP. And she won the LDP presidency on October 4th, her third attempt at the job, and was elected prime minister on October 21st, a surprising triumph in Japan's deeply patriarchal political system. Her decision to dissolve parliament 3 months later, she said in a January 19 press conference, was a profoundly weighty decision, adding that by doing so, I am also putting my position as prime minister on the line. And it was a surprising triumph, but she had been endorsed by Abe Shinzo before his death, and I think probably that endorsement played a part in her finally reaching that position on her third attempt. And also, the LDP really did not have any other good answers. Uh, you know, Takaichi has enjoyed unusually high approval ratings during her short tenure, in which she has made waves for her relaxed, friendly interactions with other world leaders. During a meeting with U.S. President just 1 week into her term, Trump and Takaichi looked more like old friends than world leaders. She's a delight, Trump told business leaders after they met. I got to know her pretty well in a short period of time. Days before the election, Trump gave his total endorsement of Takaichi, writing in a post to Truth Social that she has already proven to be a strong, powerful, and wise leader, and one that truly loves her country. He added that he plans to welcome Takaichi to Washington in March. And Trump also enjoyed a close bond with Takaichi's mentor, former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who was assassinated in July 2022. And Takaichi's decisive leadership style and support for traditional values have drawn comparisons to Margaret Thatcher, whom she cites as inspiration. But it hasn't all been sunny for Japan's first woman leader. She has been scrutinized for her relentless work schedule, which included calling a 3 a.m. meeting with aides. Comments she made about Taiwan, the democratic island claimed by China, also cratered Tokyo's relationship with Beijing. Takaichi broke Japan's long tradition of ambiguity on Taiwan when she told Parliament in November that a Chinese attack on the island, which lies just 60 miles from Japanese territory, could trigger a military response from Tokyo. I think I've talked about how there is a Japanese island that is, the name of it is Yonaguni Island, and it's just 60 miles actually to the due east of the Taiwan Island. And I mentioned that in fact, I was there on the Pacific coast of Taiwan, and on a clear day, you can look out and you can see the Yonaguni Island. China retaliated by canceling flights, restricting imports of Japanese seafood, and ramping up military patrols, among other measures. Right. Okay. So, China's not at all happy, and China wants to be able to rule the wants to be able to rule East Asia, and that is not going very well at all. So, we'll see how this works out. Let's see here. The effect on China is especially interesting. Now, Takaichi basically, I think, is pretty much assured of a term that will last at least until the middle of 2028. Um, Ishiba, her predecessor, only lasted about a year because he couldn't inspire the voters to vote for his party. But now she has a cushion. And even if sort of unforeseen things happen, which always do in politics, but even in that kind of situation, she has a cushion that is going to keep her in power, I expect, for the next 2.5 years, which means that China's going to have to deal with it one way or another. And she's already proven that she cannot be bullied, that she has refused to backtrack on her statement that a emergency for Taiwan, meaning invasion from China, an emergency for Taiwan is also an emergency for Japan. Sort of implying, although she hasn't said it, but sort of implying that Japan will become involved in that conflict one way or another. And that is something that China truly fears because China has an experience, two experiences with Japanese military. Uh, they lost the first time, the first Sino-Japanese War they lost, and then they won the second one, I guess you can say, but that was because Japan surrendered to the United States and to Russia, that they won the second Sino-Japanese War. Um, but China definitely would rather not have to face the Japanese military in any way, shape, or form, I'm sure. Uh, you know, in addition to, of course, the United States, I'm sure that the people within the Chinese military are ambivalent about facing the U.S. military, but they might fear the Japanese military even more just because of uh, well, it's basically the devil they know. See, the Communist Party, the People's Liberation Army, has never really gone. Well, they did go head to head with with the U.S. in Korea. That's true, but even there, they were lucky to pull out a tie. And Vietnam, no, Vietnam, they supported the North Vietnamese, but they were not so heavily involved in Vietnam. And of course, then they lost to Vietnam. The only recent combat experience they have is when they lost. They lost to Vietnam in the late 1970s. All right, let's see here. And okay, now let's look at the sort of the economic effects of this, because right now we're looking at Japan, and and Takaichi says that she's going to um, engage in some big spending, which is interesting because her country already has a huge, huge, huge debt burden. But one thing that that the experts are saying, and I think it's something that we can take into consideration, is that yes, Japan has a debt burden of more than 200% of GDP, and that's incredible. But they have a lot of debt, but they also have a lot of assets overseas. For example, they have $1.2 trillion in U.S. Treasuries. Okay, and yes, they are paying a lot of interest on their debt. Okay, but they are also collecting a lot of interest, such as $1.2 trillion in U.S. Treasuries, all the interest that is coming from that from the United States. Thank you very much, and other uh, overseas assets that they have. And so, if you talk about the net debt of Japan or the net interest payments of Japan, it's not nearly so bad as if you only focus on the debt itself. 200%. Wow, that's incredible. How can they survive? But let's look at the assets that offset that debt. How do they pay the interest on all that debt. Well, yeah, they're collecting a lot of it. They're collecting a lot of interest too. So it's not all bad, and it all balances out. So maybe that's why she thinks that she can do this kind of big spending. Although she is saying that she is going to have to look for sort of places in the budget where she can afford this spending. So anyway, let's take a look at this story on Japan's bond market, because Japan's bond market, this is where, the Japan carry trade, where people borrow money cheaply in Japan and then invest it in higher yielding investments outside of Japan. So the Japanese bond market is very important for the entire world financial system right now. Japan's bond market is back under scrutiny after Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's landslide election victory pushed government bond yields higher. So if yield goes higher, what does that mean? It means that prices are down, meaning that demand is down. Okay, even as stocks surge to record highs. And when stocks surge like this, it's not uncommon for bond yields to go higher, for bond prices to go down, because people are moving their money out of stocks, saying, "Hey, we can make more money." I'm sorry, you move their money out of bonds because they say, "Hey, look, we can make more money in the stocks. So let's get rid of these bonds that are only yielding 2, 3, 4% a year, and let's get into stocks that are going up now by 5 and 10% or something like that." So people move their money back and forth. On Sunday, uh, Japan's ruling LDP secured a decisive win, giving Takaichi a clear mandate and room to pursue her fiscal agenda. The agenda includes increased government spending on defense and social welfare. So, especially defense spending, right? And of course, according to the Constitution, Japan is not supposed to have a military, but they do, and it's a very strong military at that. Policies markets have long debated for their impact on Japan's already heavy public debt burden. Following Takaichi's win, Japanese equities, that's the stock market, surged nearly 6% to record highs on optimism around fiscal support for growth. Bonds, however, moved in the opposite direction. Two-year Japanese government bond yields climbed to their highest level in 3 decades. So that's quite newsworthy. Yields climbing to their highest level in 3 decades means that the prices have gone down, and because people who lend to Japan, people who are going to buy those bonds, are saying, "Hey, we need a higher interest rate to cover our risk." While benchmark 10-year yields also rose, bond prices fall when yields rise. They always go in opposite direction. Longer dated bonds sent a more mixed signal. Japan's longest maturity debt, typically the most sensitive to concerns about physical sustainability, erased mostly early yield spikes. Yields on 30-year bonds were little changed on the day around midday in Japan after surging to record highs last month. Okay, so I think the markets are going to have to sort of figure this lady out for a while, and we'll see what they finally decide about her. And people in the stock market and bond market are not political in their decisions. They go to great lengths to take the emotion out of their decisions, and so we'll see what they decide. And especially the stock market is always trying to forecast what's going to happen 6 months down the road, and so we'll see what's going on there as things progress. Now let's look at what's going on in China. This China, well, let's see here. We had a story on Thailand too, didn't we? Okay, well, but this is New York Times, and they probably aren't going to let me see it. Yeah, are they? Yeah. Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay, looks like they will. All right, special. Okay. Uh, okay, here in Thailand. Thai voters decisively reject the Progressive Party. First time in years that a conservative party preaching nationalism, patriotism, and respect for the monarchy came out on top. Interesting. China's also been trying to influence uh, Thailand a lot. It boiled down to a choice between two starkly different visions of Thailand's future, one dominated by nationalism and respect for the monarchy and defense of the status quo, the other by promises of change and true democracy. In a surprising outcome that analysts say reflected in part the growing unpredictability in global affairs, it was the nationalist vision that prevailed in Sunday's election. With 89% of the vote counted, the party seen as the standard bearer for the conservative royalist establishment won 194 seats in the 500-seat House of Representatives, besting the Progressive People's Party, which came in second, 115 seats, according to unofficial results. It was the first time in years that Thai voters backed an establishment party, signaling a shift from the progressive movement that had swept Thailand in recent years and a yearning for continuity at a time of external threats. And it defied campaign polls that had consistently given People's Party a slight edge. The polls. Now, the vote was a resounding success for the Conservative Party, traditionally seen as a regional player and lately a kingmaker in Thai politics. Its party leader was the prime minister of a most minority government for the past 5 years. He had called for the snap election to head off a potential no confidence vote. Okay, well, all right, so congratulations to people in Thailand for choosing. Sounds like they're choosing against Chinese influence, quite frankly, although it doesn't say that in the New York Times. All right, but I want to go here because this is sort of interesting in China, because the eerie silence continues and actually is getting eerier by the moment, or by the day at least. Here, so Chinese Congress sidesteps purged generals, raising questions about Xi's grip on military leaders. So the two generals that were purged at the end of January, the middle of January, I guess it was. It's been how long? About 3 weeks, I guess now. About 3 weeks. And normally you would expect them to be removed from the National People's Congress, but they weren't, which is strange, unusual, eerie. The episode marks a rare instance in which China's Congress did not move in lockstep with Xi's political agenda on a high-stakes personnel matter. So we'll see what's going on here, if we can. The Chinese Communist Party's rubber-stamped Congress quietly stripped several deputies of their seats this month, but avoided taking action against two senior figures whose political downfall had already been publicly announced. This omission is raising questions about internal resistance to Chinese leader Xi Jinping's authority over the armed forces. On February 4, Chinese state media outlet Xinhua News Agency announced the termination of the credentials of 3 National People's Congress deputies, all drawn from China's defense industrial sector. Yet, the NPC did not address the status of Zhang Youxia and Liu Zhenli, 2 high-ranking military leaders whose investigations were officially announced on January 24th, although they began several days before that, and who, according to public records, still retained their seats as NPC deputies within the military and armed police delegation. The decision, or lack of one, ran counter to widespread expectations that the rubber-stamped Congress would move swiftly to formalize their political removal, as has been standard practice in previous purges. So if this is a rubber-stamped Congress, and the rubber is not stamping, obviously someone somewhere, behind the scenes is doing something, saying, hold on there. We're not ready to do that, or you're not ready to do that. So just hold on there. And I guess, some sort of movement is taking place in the background where we don't know. We have to wait and see for the outcome, I guess. It's one of those situations where you lock the door and wait and see who comes out alive and who gets put down. The 3 deputies, Zhou Xinmin and Liu Qi and Liu Kangli, all have long careers in China's military-industrial complex. I guess these are the people who were removed. Okay. Zhou previously served. We don't need that. While closely linked to sensitive defense technologies, none of the 3 occupied positions at the core of the People's Liberation Army's command structure, highlighting what analysts described as a selective approach that avoids the most politically sensitive targets. An insider within the party, speaking under the pseudonym Jin She, because of fear of reprisal, told the Epoch Times that the military had submitted a proposal requesting that the NPC revoke Zhang Enliu's credentials, seeking formal approval from the Congress. According to Jean, if such a proposal had not been on the table, there would have been little reason to convene a special standing committee meeting at all. The NPC is already scheduled to hold its routine session later this month. The fact that the proposal failed to pass, Jean said, suggested a breakdown in coordination at the top of the CCP's political hierarchy and may point to emergent friction between Xi and Zhao Leji, who oversees the National People's Congress. If accurate, the episode would mark a rare instance in which the NPC did not move in lockstep with Xi's political agenda on a high-stakes personnel matter. Mainland constitutional scholar Huang Tian, also speaking under a pseudonym, told the Epoch Times that while the NPC Standing Committee has wide discretion in handling deputies' qualifications, the pattern on display is politically atypical. In form, selectively terminating certain deputies' credentials does not violate procedure, Huang said, but in substance, handling only peripheral figures while deliberately avoiding the core targets is not how the system normally operates. In previous anti-corruption campaigns and military purges, once senior generals were formally investigated, the revocation of their NPC status was typically a procedural formality. What makes the current episode stand out, Huang noted, is that the NPC Standing Committee met shortly after Zhang Enliu's investigations were announced, yet chose not to act on their cases at all. If the leadership believes it is too early to make a decision, the issue usually does not enter the meeting agenda in the first place, he said. There is little precedent for convening a meeting and then deliberately sidestepping the most central figures. Another China-based scholar, identified only by his surname He, because of fear of reprisal, told the Epoch Times that the NPC's inactions sends a political signal. It indicates that consensus has not yet been reached within the top leadership on key questions of military authority and institutional control, he said. Consensus has not been reached. That sounds like a euphemism for something. It's like they're still, batting each other and still trying to knock each other out. And they're throwing the chair at each other, throwing the lamp and everything. But they're both still standing. We have to wait to see or something like that, right? Consensus has not yet been reached. According to her, the failure to resolve Zhang Enliu's status is less a sign of the NPC suddenly asserting independence than evidence that Xi's efforts to consolidate power within the Central Military Commission have encountered obstacles. Since January 24th, signs of abnormality have extended beyond the NPC. Official Chinese channels have released no reports of CMC meetings, collective activities, or senior-level military engagements. The PLA Daily website has also remained silent on routine CMC operations. On February 6th, the CCP's propaganda mouthpiece, People's Daily, published an article titled "Always Keeping Soldiers' Well-Being at Heart, Chairman Xi Jinping's Deep Concern." The piece relied on retrospective, emotive storytelling about Xi's past troop inspections and expressions of care for rank-and-file soldiers, but offered no information about current military decision-making or command activity. Interesting. The contrast underscores the opaque reality of the CCP's military governance. Well, okay. we know about that. To date, no official verdict has been reached regarding Zhang Enliu. The operational status of the CMC and the trajectory of Xi's authority within it remain uncertain. So basically, we don't know what is going on. We don't know what is going on. So people are free to speculate, and a lot of people are speculating, but truth is, we just don't know. I saw a video about, tanks on Beijing Street. We don't know what it means. But it'll come clear soon. President Trump is right now scheduled to go to China in April, but China could cancel that. they could use the U.S. sale of weapons to Taiwan as an excuse to cancel that visit by Trump. Um, of course, the fact that they cancel it for that reason does not mean that that is the actual reason. It could be that Xi Jinping is not available. Xi Jinping in air quotes here, if you're just listening to this, not available in air quotes. But we don't know. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know. Yeah. But at some point, someone's going to have to make an appearance or say something or something, because well, for one thing, the people of China themselves, I'm sure, would like to know what the heck is going on. By the way, I mentioned President Trump needing a little help from Takaichi right now. He ended the week last week with his support just really tanking. It looked like a cryptocurrency or something. You see it there. In let's see, so from February 2nd, he was at 46, and then he finished February 6th at 41. So 5 points in 4 days. That's a pretty sudden crash, and we'll have to see how things, what kind of numbers are posted for this morning. But um, I think right now, the base case right now is that the Republican Party loses control of the House in the midterm elections. That's the base case that we're looking at right now. Um, unless something drastic happens between now and November, I think it's pretty clear that the Republicans are going to lose control of the House. Um, and the Senate may be up for grabs as well. I don't know, but things are not looking good right now. So what happens if President Trump no longer has a majority, or the Republicans no longer control the House? If Hakeem Jeffries would become Speaker, that would, that's pretty much certain if Democrats take over. He is Pelosi's man. And I guess, will they impeach Trump? Possibly, possibly. Maybe they'll figure, well, maybe third time's the try, maybe third time's the charm. And if things keep on going as they are, they may actually succeed this time. They may actually find the votes in the Senate to convict President Trump this time. Uh, President Trump is not really looking at the polls, I think. He's just doing what he wants to do, what he thinks is necessary for the country, regardless of what the polls say. And yeah, the result is that he's kind of tanking right now, and he needs to get things together, I think. He wants the Republican Party to maintain control. Of course, they're talking about what is it, the $2,000 check that they keep talking about it, right? They keep talking about it. I think today there's another update on the $2,000 check, but I don't know how much effect that's going to have. I mean, uh, I don't know if Americans really are willing to sell their votes for $2,000. Mm. We'll have to see what an effect that has. But if the $2,000 actually come through, if they don't, then the Republicans really are in a pickle. Really are in a pickle. We'll see what happens with that. All right, let's see what else is on the Epic Times here. Let me share these headlines with you. But yeah, I'm afraid right now that base case right now is that Republicans lose control of the House in November, or actually, well, in January, basically, the new House would come to order at the beginning of January. Um, you know, Xi tightened grip on Beijing garrison before purge of senior military leaders. Okay, signs of strain inside China's top military body after senior purge. Insiders, China's anti-corruption drive deepens. Right. And apparently there was a football game last night. I don't know what that is. Okay. And California sues companies for supporting ghost gun manufacturing. So ghost guns are guns that you basically people. Oh, there are a couple of ways of doing it. One is that they buy the parts. They buy the parts and then put them together, and they're ghosts because there are no serial numbers. And another way, of course, is that you get a 3D printer and you manufacture a gun yourself using a 3D printer. Although I'm told that a gun manufactured on a 3D printer is probably good for just one shot, and maybe it sort of falls apart after that. But anyway, ghost guns. An average of 11,000 ghost guns and auto sears were recovered per year in the state between 2021 and 2025, the lawsuit states. Okay. And foreign national arrested in illegal Las Vegas biolab biolab faces felony gun charge. We talked about the biolab last week. And see here. Sheer passive resistance spreading beyond military in China. Okay, is this another different one? Okay. Insiders with knowledge of the Chinese regime's internal discussions say passive non-compliance has begun to spread from the People's Liberation Army into the civilian administrative system, complicating Beijing's ability to enforce key directives issued by Chinese leader Xi Jinping. We have to be careful of these kinds of stories because it sounds like China is falling apart, and it may be true. It may be true. But also, especially since it's the Epoch Times, it could be wishful thinking. Now, the Epoch Times is backed by Falun Gong, which of course has a history of being persecuted by the Chinese communists, and many of their people have been put in jail. Many of them have been executed by means of organ harvesting. In other words, they kill people by removing organs from the body. So, understandably, Falun Gong and Epoch Times have a certain opinion about the Chinese Communist Party, and because they're directly aware of the atrocities of this party. So it's possible that they may write stories that reflect wishful thinking, and that's just as human emotion, I think. So something like this, for example, could be true, and I think Epoch Times does a good job of remaining professional and not becoming a propaganda organ. But we still have to be careful with this. But anyway, let's go ahead and read what they're telling us. Multiple insiders who spoke to the Epoch Times said this breakdown in command is part of long-standing pattern of tension between the senior party leadership and the military. They pointed to previous episodes in which the Chinese Communist Party officials encountered resistance from the military while attempting to manage politically sensitive crises, particularly under former CCP leader Jiang Zemin. The latest tensions are occurring. So this happened before. At that time, it did not result in the total breakdown of the communist system, and so it won't necessarily do that this time either. The latest tensions are occurring after a political purge. Okay, and okay, the analysts and insiders who spoke to the Epoch Times are based in China. Okay, the China's military hierarchy. You know about that. So in case say shockwaves. For decades, CCP has prioritized political loyalty over professional competence, and we've talked about that, and so forth. Okay. Although the precise status of Zhang Youxia and Liu remains unclear, China-based insiders told Epoch Times that both have refused to cooperate with investigators. Their non-cooperation is likely known to the PLA's lowest level officers and soldiers, who now are showing reluctance to act on orders from the top. That non-compliance is in turn spilling into the broader bureaucracy, weakening the regime's administrative machinery, Feng said. Passive resistance within the PLA manifested through silence, delay, and non-cooperation, is increasingly affecting the regime's civilian governance. Under the regime's strategy of military-civil fusion, many civilian resources serve the military sector. That civilian administrative system includes military university administrators and defense researchers. After CMC Vice Chairman Jiang Xiangmin, who had been promoted in October 25, instructed the PLA's 5 theater commands and service branches to publicly pledge resolute support for the unified command of the CMC, the response was muted at best and defiant at worst. So PLA, the People's Liberation Army, is divided into 5 parts, 5 theater commands. And there's speculation that if we see the kind of collapse in China that we saw in the Soviet Union, then the 5 theater commands may sort of become independent entities. They already have a great deal of autonomy. They have their own businesses, for example, and they do international trade on their own without going through the central command. But these 5 theater commands sort of act as or appear to be a kind of a nascent coalition of republics of their own, or military authoritarian regimes of their own. And that's one interesting thing that could happen in China, post-communist China. When unified command is mentioned now, the reaction is intense, but not in a positive way, Feng said, referring to internal discussions. It's not just the uniformed officers who aren't cooperating. Civilian administrators are also staying silent. When either side signals support, the situation becomes extremely difficult. All right, so we'll see. Shift in propaganda tone, okay. All right, so decades of tightening political control over the military have produced predictable consequences. Okay, so they go on and on, but we'll have to see. We'll have to sort of reserve judgment, I think, on what is happening in China. Continue to pray that God's will be done. I'm sure that God knows exactly what is going on, and He will, of course, based on our prayers, based on the conditions set by our prayers in Cheongsam, He will guide the Communist Party towards the outcome that He needs to happen, whatever that may be. Yeah. But what does it mean for the invasion of Taiwan? I guess that's the one thing that we're always interested in. And as I've stated, I think right now Xi Jinping definitely plans to invade Taiwan. That he has made the decision that he's going to invade Taiwan. Probably next year, potentially this year, potentially 2018. But he has made that decision. The question is when. And but the problem that he has right now, as you can see, is that he can't be confident right now that he has total control of the military. But he has put people in charge of, he's promoted people who are loyal to him. And this is interesting because, he purged a lot of people and put in people that are loyal to him, I think, right? Or at least he purged people who were not loyal to him, or who did not just sort of start jumping and saying how high every time he said jump. And yet the military is silent for the most part. And the NPC is silent right now. Okay. So he has decided that he will invade Taiwan, but he may not be confident that the military will actually do the job that it needs to, because if they invade in a kind of half-hearted way, right, then they're going to get smashed. Taiwan's going to defeat them. The invasion will be a failure. And that would be bad. That's the worst possible outcome for Xi Jinping. Because that would be definitely the end of his regime. And potentially the end of the Communist Party regime in general. So that's the danger that he faces. So how to deal with that? How to deal with that? Yeah, how to deal with that? That is the problem I think that he is facing right now, and we'll see what he does. But one way or another, either he invades. What happens if he doesn't invade? Well, after all this talk of invading, if he doesn't invade and cannot take over Taiwan by other means, such as infiltrating and stuff like that, then that also will mean the end of his regime. And in that case, the Communist Party will survive, but they will just put in somebody else to take over in his place, someone who is more moderate. They'll say, they'll pretend as though the Chinese Communist Party is capable of reforming and capable of flexibility. And then the Chinese people will say, "Oh, okay, all right, so we got it. So yeah, okay, you guys can keep on ruling and denying us our freedoms for a little while longer." Uh, Unfortunately, that's the reality. That's the reality. Yeah. I think I've talked about this before, but when I first arrived in Korea in 1978, of course, that was the final year of Park Chung-hee's very tight authoritarian regime. It's called the Yushin regime, where just any kind of public criticism, even if you're just talking to friends around the water cooler, would get you in trouble, would get you hauled down to the police station if you're criticizing the government. And uh, then after that, we had the short-lived, what is it called? Seoul Spring, I guess it was called, or the Korean Spring, where there was some let up of that. But then in May, or actually December, when Chun Doo-hwan and No Tae-woo pulled off their coup and then um, tightened things down after that. But one thing I noticed at that time was that people were willing to give up their freedoms. People were telling me that they were willingly giving up their freedoms because they said, "Oh, well, we've got North Korea. We have to, North Korea and national security. That's the most important human right." This is what they were telling me then. National security, the most important human right. And Chinese people right now are also thinking something similar. That okay, we understand that we're not able to use the internet the way that people in other countries do, and we understand that our speech is limited and stuff like that. But we're willing to give up those freedoms for the sake of the sort of the common good, I guess, or for the sake of the development of our nation. And look, what the Communist Party has accomplished after all. They brought us out of poverty and stuff like that. Well, they put you in poverty in the first place. Mao Zedong killed tens of millions of people, mostly through starvation. And so they let up and let a little bit of capitalism in, um, and now they're kind of Xi Jinping, I think, wants to go back to or go to socialism. But people are willing to say, okay, well, the Communist Party is doing overall, they're doing a good job of governing the country, governing the economy. So we're willing to give up our freedom. But where does the line? Where's the line? Where's the line? In Korea, the line came, I think, in June 1987, when people said, well, this is it. This is the line. And you've crossed our red line, and we're not going to take it anymore. That was June of 1987. And basically everyone was demonstrating. People in white shirts and ties were demonstrating. The maids in Lotte Hotel were demonstrating in the front lobby, with their sitting in the front lobby with their arms interlocked and singing communist revolutionary songs. So that was June 1987, and things sort of broke basically in terms of the military authoritarian regime at that point. So when is China's red line going to come for the people of China? We don't know. We don't know, and no one can know, and they don't know. And it may come just for a part of China and not another part. Maybe people around Shenzhen and Guangzhou will have, one experience, or maybe people in other parts will have a time when they don't want to go any further. We'll have to see. We'll have to just watch and see. Continue to pray that God's will can be done. Right. Anyway, it is now God's will that I stop. So I will do that, and I will see you tomorrow. God bless, Godspeed, and may His kingdom come quickly.